Hi, I'm John Glynn. This session is going to be about using your mobile telephone for your camera, and I'm going to run through some options that your mobile telephone might have. Not all the mobile telephones are going to be the same, so I'm going to have to be using my one. All you can do is have a look at yours and just see what similarities there are. I'm using a smartphone, so it may have more options on it than a traditional mobile telephone. I think it's best a matter of having a look at your own phone, and don't be afraid to press buttons. The menus settings on my phone may be slightly different from yours again, so even though we may have the same options, they may not be in the same location. The actual options in a mobile telephone are similar also in compact cameras and bridge cameras, so you may find that there's a crossover between your different cameras that you've got, so learning one may help in understanding others as well. Okay, so the phone I'm using is a Huawei phone, but as I said, you may find there are similar options on the one you'll be using. Okay, I'll get started. Right, I've got my mobile telephone set up. I'll keep it in the standard way that we use mobile telephones, like a portrait, so that it's a bit easier to see the different options that are available to you. But do remember that you can take pictures in landscape, in other words turn your camera or the phone on its side, rather than always keeping it upright. Upright we call portrait, and if the camera or telephone was on its side, that would be landscape. Okay, so in the very first instance here we have photo, which is in blue. I've just taken a picture. There we are. There it is, blue, and you can see that everything in my picture should be pretty sharp. It's just a standard setting to take a photograph. Nothing special in this particular setting. The camera doesn't know what you're photographing, so it will assume you're wanting everything sharp from where you are to the far distance, infinity, effectively. Okay, it's good practice just to get used to the general layout of your camera, where the menus are and what they might mean. So I'm just going to go through the few at the top, just in standard photo mode. And the first one is to do with specialist lenses that I can potentially get for my camera. These are usually things that you may have to actually purchase, so it may not come as standard with your camera. So just to be aware that some stuff may be potentially possible with your mobile telephone, but you'd have to spend more money. The next option on here, Intelligent Auto. Intelligent Auto is this one here on my camera. It's got a little AI option, and it's either on or off. No camera is intelligent. Okay, all they can ever do is do it by guesswork, either by distance. If things are measured by the camera as being a distant object, they presume you're doing landscape. If you're got something that's fairly close up and round, so sort of like an egg shape or something like that, then they assume it's a human being. But it could be a statue, and possibly even a football. So, and then go to portrait mode. So Intelligent Auto is a misnomer. There is no such thing. So I would, generally speaking, turn it off. The next option I've got is to do with flash. I've got flash auto, flash off, flash on all the time, and the light bulb. The light bulb is basically quite handy for doing video, basically, which is more likely when you're going to use it, and you can just see it being reflected in my television. It's just what would be the flash on the camera being switched on the whole time, and it acts as a torch as well, of course. If you have the little torch icon, it's the same thing. So it's the same light, and usually we would turn it off. It uses a lot of battery power, but it might be useful, as I said, in the video. But it's less likely to be used in stills photography. But you've got flash, so I would normally have flash off. But if you're in very low lighting conditions inside a pub or something, you'll have no choice but to turn it on. Then we've got I've got little colour swatch. The little colour swatches allow me to try different effects out. Oh, it goes to sleep very quickly to save battery power, but I've got impact, other ones for the long, halo, things like that, and you can see that it changes the look of the photograph on my phone. So it's a matter of trying them out, see what they're like. You take a picture, it will be in that style. So if you like the look, you use it. If you don't like the look, you don't use it. Dawn gives a kind of flare effect, so as though the sun's coming and hitting the front of the lens. Oh, I didn't want that option. I wanted to go back to photo and just touching things. Nostalgia looks like that, where it's a weird colour, slightly fogged film, I suppose. So, you know, you've got that sort of various options. Normally we're going to just go with standard, but do have a go with them and just see if you like it. I'll say none, and we're back to normal photography. Then we have, I better say the cog. The cog gives you choices here as to picture quality, which comes under the word resolution. The bigger that number is, it's got 13 million pixels on here. The bigger that number is, the better. Okay, pictures made up of little squares, which we call pixels. The more pixels you have, in theory, the better picture you have. So that's a good starting point. So if you've got a 20 million pixel camera, you make it sure it's 20 million. If it's 10 million is your maximum, you use 10 million. Whatever the maximum number is, we try to aim for. Location tag. Location tag would be for taking pictures, and it will put a little tag on your picture. You may not actually see the tag, it's sort of hidden, but it will tell you where it's taken and the date and the time, which is recorded anyway. At least the date and time are recorded, but not location. So to turn that on would need or require you to have your location options on. It will link into satellite technology and could use a lot of battery power. Assisted grid, which if I turn on with these little buttons, there we are. Now go back to my picture. You'll see a grid lines on my camera or my phone there. They can help to do, you know, rule of thirds, so you can see where you're putting stuff in your picture area, or to make sure that it's level. You could use that as a way of making sure that your horizon lines are square and not at a funny angle. So if you have a grid facility, it may be useful for composition. And then it's a matter of turning it off. And I've also got further down here, capture smiles. What will happen there is the camera will take a picture of a group of people or a person if they're smiling, and if they're not smiling, it may not take the picture at all. So I tend to turn it off for the simple reason that not everybody smiles the same way, and the camera may not recognize them smiling even though they are. So it won't let you take a picture. So I don't bother with it. But you can try it out. It may be very effective for your particular subjects, so there's no harm in trying it. Other options I've got here, there's I'm going to jump here to portrait mode. And in portrait mode, what will happen is that your camera will, you can point to your camera and just touch it on my monitor, and that tells me where I'm focusing and also taking light readings. It will focus on that point and blur background. So if we don't want to see the person in the background who we never met, and it's and we're photographing a friend, then we just put it to portrait mode and the person in the background will be slightly blurred. The further they are away from the camera, the more blurred they will be. Okay, so you can try portrait mode. It doesn't know what you're photographing, so it will work on any subject, as it has done here. It doesn't know that the I've got a guitar in the way, so it still treats it as though it's a portrait. I've got night photography. Night photography would be a long exposure time, so I may need a tripod for that, and you just sort of wing it a little bit. There's no, it's just going to be a long time for taking the picture at night because of low light. And I've got an aperture option on my camera where I can change the aperture, and if the aperture is, I've got f4, if I touch that and make it so it goes to f9.5, it blurs the background. And if I take the same picture and go to f9.5 and make it so that it's a smaller aperture, a bigger number, it sharpens everything. You may just about see that on the camera. It's definitely doing it. It will change how long it takes to take a picture because it needs more light. If your aperture is very small, which is a hole in the lens, the bigger the number, the smaller the hole. So it lets less light in. So it means it takes longer to take a photograph. If you've got a bigger hole, which is a smaller number, more light will come in more quickly, and therefore you can have a quicker shutter speed. But you lose focus, so you get this thing we call depth of field, and it blurs foreground and background. Can be quite effective. We use it a lot in portraiture and other things as well. It's quite nicely here actually. I can see it's blurred parts of my guitar and the background, so it can be quite effective. So I've got the aperture option, and if I keep on going down to the right, I've got more. We'll go to more. More gives you other choices. I've got a Pro mode. Pro in this camera again gives you different choices. It allows me to change the ISO. I just touch the back of the camera, the ISO becomes active. I've got 200, 400, 1600, auto. I can change the ISO. The ISO changes the sensitivity of the sensor to light, and effectively allows the camera to take a picture more quickly under low lighting conditions. So, but you do lose picture quality, so it's a trade-off. I've got ways of metering the light in here. There's everything center weighted and spot. It's on everything at the moment. So in a normal camera, I'd advise people to use center weighted. It's a better way of reading light than a bit of everything, but it's up to you. You can try it out and see what you think. And I've got a shutter speed, and if I touch the shutter, it allows me, at the moment it's on auto, but if I change the shutter speed, we can see what the effect is. There's 200th of a second. The slower or the longer the exposure, the lighter the picture will be. The quicker or bigger number, 1/4000th of a second, the darker your picture will be. And it's up to you where you set it, and then you take a picture. Okay, so shutter speed is all about time, how quickly it will take a photograph. If you're doing sport photography or anything that's moving, you need a quick shutter speed, otherwise you'll get motion blur. So you need more light. We've got an EV setting, which is exposure value. You can force the camera to see more or less light and pretend that there's more light than there really is. Effectively an exposure compensation option. And it does something a bit like the ISO or aperture or shutter speed even. It sort of just changes the amount of light that the camera sees. We would normally leave it on 0. And we have autofocus. I've got autofocus C, which is continuously focusing all the time. I would normally put it on AFS. Now, when I preset my camera, when it goes off completely, I have to start all over again because it goes back to normal settings. So do be aware you may have to do this each time you go off and take pictures. Just make sure that the camera has still retained the way that you've set it up, otherwise it will just go back to default factory setting. And I've also got white balance. White balance is to do with the colour of light. Auto white balance is meant to represent everything as we see it. but we do have the choice of changing the white balance. And we got cloudy day. You'll see that the colour becomes a bit warmer because the opposite colour of daylight is yellow and daylight is blue. We've got sunny day, which is just the sun with a funny little drawing, like child's drawing of a sun, and that is a bit blue, but not as blue as cloud, so it warms the picture up slightly, but cloudy day more so. We also have tungsten. Tungsten is a yellow light, and the opposite of yellow is blue, so it will add a blue colour cast to your picture if you photograph outdoors. And it's quite interesting if you want to make something feel cold. And we have fluorescent. Now you may have more than one form of fluorescent, but fluorescent traditionally was a green light, and the opposite of green is magenta, so it gives a kind of purpley hue to your pictures. And you may have I've got a little square with 2 wedges, or you may have the word preset, and that is for setting up your own lighting if you had a little studio. Otherwise you're not going to use it. Okay, so white balance I will put back to normal. I'll just put onto auto. Coming out of all of those settings on the I'll go back and go back into more and just explain a few others. I've got panorama. Panorama gives me a line with a big arrow on it. When I press the shutter button to take a picture, I have to move the camera along that line, so I have to watch that line and watch the arrow and make sure it doesn't go outside the band, and keep it as much as possible on that line, and the camera will then stitch all the little pictures together and make one long image. If you were printing it, you'd have to tell the printer that you've done a panorama, because they need different paper from normal photographic paper to print it. Otherwise it'll be very small, and very long and thin. So it's you just keep it, and as that travels along towards the end, it just stops taking a picture, and you do it slowly, because if you do it too quickly it can't take enough pictures. So panorama in my camera anyway is that one. I will go back to more again. I got weird lenses which I haven't purchased, so I don't have that option. Light painting may be on your camera. I've got things like to do with light graffiti, where I can swing the camera around. I can do long exposure times for motion and water moving, traffic with long exposure with moving of traffic, all that kind of thing. So there are different choices. Again, it's a matter of trying it. Some of them will only really work when they're meant to, like light trails for stars. Isn't going to work during the day because we can't see the stars during the day. So it's going to be nighttime only. And more again. I've got HDR photography. HDR is where the camera will take more than one photo very, very quickly and stitch them together at different exposures. So it'll take a picture which is a bit darker, one that should be normal, and one maybe a bit lighter, and then it molds them all together into one picture. And that's for high contrast sort of photographs, pictures where you have difficulty having any detail in the midtones. So we would, it's to take usually 3, sometimes 4 pictures, but I think this one is set up for 3. And then it molds all 3 photographs into one picture automatically, and is meant to give you a better photograph. So it kind of a bit hit and miss. I can give it a go and just see what it does, and I'm not too sure how it'll look, but if I have a look at the picture, there it is in full glory. It looks okay. It looks better on my phone than it does in this recording. Okay, so it's holding detail in the highlights and in the shadows in the room. So that's the HDR function. Go back. I've got time lapse. Time lapse is where it will take a number of pictures over a period of time, maybe one picture every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes, something like that. You'll need a tripod for that to work, and maybe an attachment for your battery to make sure it doesn't run out of battery. And then when you've done the time lapse, you see it as a little film, and it looks like it's all happening very, very quickly. So how effective that is on your phone, all you can do is try it if you have that option. I've got a moving picture option. Moving picture is where you take a still photograph, but it moves ever so slightly at the beginning of the shot. It looks a little bit Harry Potter-ish. So I think it's based on the sort of Harry Potter look, where you get a little bit of motion at the beginning of each photograph. And I've got stickers, which in my case are a complete waste of time, and therefore it's pointless looking at them. But some cameras may have smiley faces and things like that, which you can attach, and hearts and things which you can attach to your picture. Okay, so there's different choices there. A matter of trying them out. The main thing on this session is to try out your camera, your mobile phone, try out the different options it has, and just see where it takes you. And don't be afraid to press buttons on your camera. You're not going to break it. It will usually go back to default settings when it goes to sleep, or if you turn it off and turn it on again. Okay, thanks for watching.